You know, when you think about Control-Alt-Delete, and we're thinking about like rebooting operating systems, and we think about leadership, mindset, leadership skills, the question today is, how do you reboot in the midst of uncertainty, right? How do you help yourself get really clear on what matters most in the moment when everything is unpredictable? I mean, the world we are in right now is unpredictable. So I just want to say, lean on in, because we've got a fabulous guest here today. Brian Trzaskos, welcome to Control-Alt-Delete.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. So spoiler alert for anyone who's listening, you're so welcome, Brian. Brian has actually coached me for the last year. He and his business partner, Ani, have been really instrumental in me navigating uncertainty as a business owner, as a parent, as a coach. And I couldn't think of a better conversation to have today than one with Brian around really taking a look at how might we resource ourselves, listen to our own innate knowing, and also block out all the noise that we need to sometimes to be really clear as leaders in tech with so much uncertainty. So Brian, a question I have for you, and I want to get into your credentials, but hopefully my vow here, as far as you helping me, people know. But I really want to better understand, I tell people you're my somatic coach. Like you do somatic coaching. And honestly, I don't even know what I'm saying. I just know it works. Right? Like I get into my body, I do these breathing things. I breathe into my pain. I use some colors, I do some stuff, but I know there's science behind it and there's a definition. So could you just, what is it you do? And why am I calling you my somatic coach? Like, what does that mean?
Well, the word soma. Thanks so much, Lisa, for bringing this up. I mean, it's always so exciting to work with you and to work with leaders and with people who are really curious, curious about what's going on underneath the surface. If you everybody's seen the iceberg image. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that image is used for a lot of different analogies and that sort of thing. And so we think about it, the top of the iceberg is, think about that as like being your conscious mind, or the part of your brain that you can plan with and categorize and look into the future with and that sort of thing. But underneath the water level, the big, huge part of the iceberg is your subconscious. And so we are primarily subconscious beings, right? 5% of our mind power is conscious, and 95% is subconscious. So there's another stat I just love to pop out here. So think about this from like the computing world, like a processor speed. The subconscious mind processes 20 million bits of information every second. The subconscious mind processes 20 million bits of information every second, and the conscious mind processes 40 bits of information every second.
Okay, I think this is a first. I've never been like gobsmacked like that before. What? So here, okay.
So who's running the show? Right?
This is what I wanted to say to you. This is why whenever we work together and we get inside, it's clear on who's running the show. And many times it's the wrong person driving the car, right? Like you helped me get back in the driver's seat. And I didn't understand that before, but what you're saying, and I really want to highlight this for any leader who's listening in right now, what a question to ask yourself, who's running the show? So yes, I want you to finish, but you actually, I had an energetic like outpouring of, oh my God, yes. So yes.
Yeah. And so we know that the subconscious is running the show, right? It can process things faster, more completely than the conscious mind can on any day of the week, any hour of the day. And our subconscious mind is our body. Our body is our subconscious mind. So think about this. Right now, we're sitting here having a conversation, and we're not paying attention to our liver functioning. We're not paying attention.
About my liver.
You're not thinking about your liver. You're not thinking about your pancreas. I'm not thinking about my digestion. I'm not thinking about my heart or my lungs or my muscles or anything. All that stuff is happening subconsciously. So in order for the subconscious to keep working, it works based on patterns of function, programs. Right? It works based on programs. And the way the subconscious is programmed, we don't have enough time, like in our time together today, to get into all of that stuff, right? We go into that with our clients and our trainings and our certifications and things like that. But the subconscious is programmed. And then once it's programmed, it sets up all these firewalls around it to keep the programs operating, to keep the program, whatever's operating stays operating. If you don't go in there and change the operation, it'll just keep going forever, that same program. Now, lots of times people try to use their conscious mind to override their subconscious programs. However, the conscious mind processes 40 bits of information per second. The subconscious mind processes 20 million bits of information per second. So the conscious mind has no prayer to direct or change subconscious functioning by thinking about it. However, the patterns, the programs reveal themselves in the body function itself, in the soma. So soma means body, body means soma from ancient Greek. So when we talk about somatic, we're talking about working in the body. And from a somatic coaching or somatic intelligence perspective, what we're doing is we're tapping into the programs that are running in the subconscious mind that are directing our conscious function, the way we think about things, the choices we make, the decisions we make, the actions we take, right? Those things are all being driven from our subconscious mind. And if we're not aware of it, it's very difficult for our conscious mind to reroute subconscious functions. So what we do with somatic coaching is we go into the level of the subconscious program itself in the body, and we change the programming itself, which then gives us a different result.
Dude, you go into the code, you rewrite the code.
You rewrite the code, yeah.
You're finding the bug in the you're finding the bug in the code, and it's not a feature, people, it's a bug.
Yeah.
Right? Like so many times we talk about features, and they're really bugs and what that looks like. So I think about all of my time in tech, and like, how do we open up a ticket to fix the bug? That's what you've been doing with me. You've been helping me open the tickets and fixing the bugs. This is so freaking awesome. Okay. So here's what I know. This is some people might be listening, like, you've been coaching with this guy, but you didn't know what he did. And I'm going to say, I do know what he does because I know how it's worked on me, but I didn't know how to describe it. It's actually one of the reasons I invited you here, so we could really land that for people, because I talk about you a lot and they go, what does he do? I'm like, but now I know. Like, we're working on the code and we're working on the programming that's not stuck up here, but that's running throughout my system. And it's not lost on me. It's not lost on me how much is based in science, yet for so many, it's hard to even comprehend. So I'm so grateful for the statistics you're giving us. Let me do the formal introduction so that we can land that aspect of this. And then I have some really important questions, but I want to tell everybody who you are formally, right? So Brian Trzaskos is a somatic intelligence expert. Now we have the definition, right? And co-creator of sensation-based motivation coaching. And he's a nationally recognized expert for his work in coaching and mentoring leaders. Here's the thing that isn't lost on me is that how many of your clients are like me that know it works, but don't know how to talk about it? Am I the only one?
No, you're not the only one.
Right?
Right, yep.
Yeah, okay. So we're in uncertain times. Things are crazy. Here's this Lisa holding her podcast episode talking about why what you do matters. Let's really go into the uncertain space for a minute and talk about some practical things people can do, knowing that you understand the body, soma, and the programming that's going on. Where do you typically see leaders getting hung up or stuck in navigating uncertainty? Because I don't see this going away anytime soon.
Yeah, well, where we often see people get stuck, Lisa, is in overwhelm. Quite frankly, is that there's so much changing so quickly. We only have so much energy at a given day time to make decisions and to take information in, to process it, and then to make a decision output. So more often than not, we see people in overwhelm and decision overload. And think about every decision we make takes energy. Every decision we take, every single decision. And decisions that we labor over, like kind of like in what we would call important decisions, take more energy. Even I don't know if you ever noticed this or not, oftentimes later in the day, seemingly more simple decisions will take longer to make.
I've seen
Like
that.
by the end of the day, it's like, well, what do you want for dinner? Oh, I don't know. I mean, and you think about it for like 10, 20, 15 minutes, like wait, and the longer you don't make that decision, like that's taking energy the whole time. It's
Mhm.
like almost like you've opened up an application on your device and it's running in the background and it's taking energy to run in the
Yeah.
background, right? Even
Yep.
if it's like, what did you want for dinner? Where if you just said, hey, I want a hamburger, then you're done with it. And off you go. But the more fatigued we get with making decisions, the longer it takes to make subsequent decisions, and then the more energy is taken from that. So oftentimes we just see people with overwhelm and decision overload, and then it becomes a cyclical process of energy drain on them. I don't know. That's what I tend to see most often with people.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying because there's all these articles back in the day about we're the same Zuckerberg in his black shirt, right? Or
Yep.
Steve Jobs, right? With
Yeah. Yeah.
their one shirt. So no energy drain on decision making for wardrobe, right? Save it for
Yeah.
other things. Um, what I'm seeing too, so I definitely overwhelm constantly. Decision fatigue. I wouldn't have labeled it that, but I do think it's there.
Mhm.
The third, I think, is a lot of self-doubt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of self-doubt right now because of what you're talking about. Because they're making decisions with low energy or it's taking too long. Like, do
Yep.
I have what it takes? Should I just quit? Maybe
Yeah.
this isn't the right job. Like they talk about the great resignation all the time, right? In social media and publications. And what I'm seeing is people just really like, I don't even know how to talk about things anymore. I don't know how to advocate for what I want. And I'm feeling like there might be some magic in what you're going to share right here in this space around if you're feeling overwhelmed, like how to resource yourself enough to make better decisions. So, knowing what you're seeing, how are you helping leaders go from that overwhelmed decision fatigue space into a more resourced clarity? Maybe those are my words. You might have different words.
Yeah, no, I love what you're asking, and it really boils down to there's basically 3 or 4 steps to this.
Okay.
The first step, Lisa, is always address the body first. Always address your body first. I oftentimes ask people, say, well, how stressed are you? I will say, how stressed are you? And I'll have people go ahead and do a stress rating, and they'll say like, oh, I'm like 8. I'm like an 8 out of 10 stress. And I'll
Mhm.
say, why? And then they'll give me the story why, right? Because of my work or because of my family. And I'll say, well, how do you know? How do you know you're stressed?
Mhm.
And invariably, people, we get them to the point of saying, well, I know I'm stressed because I can't sleep. My back is tight. I have indigestion. It's something body related.
Mhm.
Eventually, it gets down. You're stressed because it's something body related. Once you get right down to it, it's there. So stress is a physiologic response in the body. Overwhelm is a physiologic response. Energy drain, so that you can't make decisions, is right. It's physiological first. I don't have the energy, so I can't make a decision. So we're humans living in bodies, and part of the problem with being humans is we think we're so smart, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
We
At
think we're
least I
so
do.
smart. Yeah, we think that 40 bits per second will be large enough to overcome 20 million bits per second
Mhm.
of data, and it never will be. So always address the body first. So do something with your body to alter your state. So you know how we teach all kinds of things, right? We teach shaking and blithering and tapping and slapping and all these different things we do to the body to change the energetic state in the body. So the first thing is, and it could be as simple as get up and take a walk. It could
Yep.
be like just get out of your chair. It could be, right, just move your body, like always addressing your body first. It could be do some self massage. It could be go roll on the floor. I don't know.
Mhm.
These are the things we work individually with people to help them discover for them what the most appropriate thing is for their situation. But in general, you got to address in the body first. The next thing is the breath. Next thing you do is something mindful with your breath. And there are thousands of different breath techniques out there, right? You have 4-7-8 breathing. You have just taking some like just some emptying breaths and letting it refill again. You've got alternate nostril breathing, got like tons of different breath techniques. But the reason we want to do breath practices, Lisa, is because when you do breath practices in a certain way, you actually begin harmonizing the what we call the corpus callosum in the brain. So the corpus callosum is the connection center between the brain halves, the right and left hemispheres.
Okay.
And so if we're dominant in one or other of the hemispheres, it makes it very difficult for us to think holistically about things, right? If we're really in the left brain dominance, we're really focused on these little tiny details.
Yep.
And we have a very myopic view of things, and we don't see what's going on. We don't see the big picture. And if we're in the right hemisphere, right, we see the big picture. We might have a hard time manipulating little details of information. So it makes it very hard to function well, especially with making decisions, big decisions. Like are you looking at a big view, or are you looking at like the small tactical things that need to be done on a moment-to-moment basis? So after you do your body stuff and you kind of mobilize stress hormones, release the stress hormones, that's the only way to do it, because that's what they're there for. And the next thing is to focus on your breathing in order to reorient your brain function. So body and breath are the first two parts. And those are the two parts that most people miss, to be quite frankly honest with you. They try to jump to these next ones.
Yeah, let's pause real quick.
And it doesn't
so we
work.
have always pay attention to your body first.
Address the body first. Yep.
Address the body first. Yeah, address. And then the second is breathing. So here's what I know for sure in tech. This gets missed all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to say it's like back-to-back meetings, interruptions constantly, reactive customer support, bigger demands, scope creep, all this stuff going on. And every time, and I was guilty of this myself, so I can speak to this. Who has time to breathe or move your body? Yeah. And when I burnt out, the first thing I did when I came back to work is I scheduled walking meetings, and I actually started breathing in between meetings. I changed my meeting timeframes to do that, but I didn't understand the science behind it. I just knew it helped. I appreciate you landing the science piece of this too, especially when you're focused on writing code or solving something and you're all in, like these war rooms, like everybody's all in, night and day, weekends, but you can't see the bigger piece. Then you're not bringing your whole solution to the situation. You're actually minimizing your ability to be innovative.
Yeah.
This is okay. This makes a lot of sense. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So summary of 1 and 2, where are we going? Number 3.
Yeah. And just to kind of throw one more little, lob one more thing in based on what you're talking about. Did you know that when you're experiencing a stress response, okay, which puts us dominantly in that left hemisphere where we get tunnel vision, we actually get tunnel vision. Lisa, our peripheral vision, normally peripheral vision is like 180 degrees or a little bit more. When we have a stress response, it goes to 40 degrees.
That's wild.
Literally, you get blind out here. And so if you've ever been driving a car and been frustrated, or, about a work meeting, or maybe somebody cut you off and you get like kind of frustrated, and then all of a sudden a car comes out of nowhere and you're like, oh my God, where'd they come from? They were there the whole time. They're literally in a blind spot. And so just what you're talking about, when we are so myopically dominant, the answer to your problems could be literally right next to you, and you wouldn't even see it.
Yeah, I want to highlight this through a different lens for a second, because it's that important. I interviewed a disaster doc who was doing things for like Katrina, hurricanes, right? And he basically said he woke up and he couldn't find his shoes, even though he knew preparedly. He put his shoes by his bedside, but he was in the middle of the night and an earthquake hit, like an aftershock, and he couldn't find his shoes. That's the laser focused in the stress response. They were right. He put them, he knew he put them there. So the car coming alongside you, missing the shoes, the answers to the code so many times, right? And then you go to, well, let's just manage budget through layoffs because we can't see another way. Right. We're so stressed about money and shareholder value. We're going to go right here. And the only solution is lay everybody off, or lay that team off. Like, what about part-time? What about volunteering? How might you be creative and innovative in that stress moment? Well, you can't when you're there. Like every corporate meeting should start with moving, like this is the one you taught me. I do this all the time now.
Yeah,
You taught me
exactly.
a lot, but this is one of them. And then breathing. Like, why couldn't you spend 5 minutes moving and breathing before you get into the tough stuff?
Yeah. Oh, I
This is
think it
so
would.
good.
I think it would change so much. It would
Yeah.
change so much, Lisa, because the fact is, when you're in a stress response, you actually don't have access to the majority of your brain.
Yeah.
The majority is not on, right? And we're
Yeah.
not creative. You actually cannot be creative. It's impossible to be
It's
creative.
impossible. Yeah.
Because your stress response is not designed for that.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting when you know that about science, but yet when you're living in it, you think, oh, I can intellectualize anything. I know I can.
Yeah.
Let me speak for myself. I can figure a way out of this. And then I keep doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
You know, well, I got this figured out. I'm smart. No, you can be so flippin' smart and still only be back here in your reptilian brain. And I don't give a crap how smart you are. If you can't get out of there, you're not going to have the answers, right? You're going to do the same thing over and over again. I think that's why they say, like, what is that? What's that quote about doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results?
Yeah, that's the definition of insanity.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Dude. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 3. Let's go to number 3.
So number 3 is when then you go to your vision, your mental vision, intellectual. So you don't, in my experience, you don't have much success going to the intellect until you first addressed it in the body and the breath. If you miss those two and you go to intellect, what I'm about to share with you isn't going to work very well.
Okay.
You've got to take care of that lower stuff first, because once the brain opens up, then you can do what I call a perception check. So we have to recognize, Lisa, we only have control over 3 things. With all the uncertainty in the world, all the uncertainty, pandemics and wars and politics, and who knows what's around the corner next, right? Storms and all these things. With all of the things in the world, all of the uncertainty, we only have control over 3 things, only 3 things: our perceptions, our choices, and our actions. That's it. Actions kind of / decisions, right? Because decisions show up as actions. So you can use either word. It's kind of the same thing in this case. So our perceptions, our choices, and our actions. That's all we have. The only control we have are in those 3 things. We don't have control whether or not one of our customers decides not to buy, right? We don't have control over whether or not a partner leaves. We don't have control whether or not a storm hits. We don't have control whether we don't have control over any of those things. But here's the problem: when those things make us uncertain, or when the uncertainty rocks us in our core, we have an illusion that if we just could fix that uncertainty outside of us, that we feel better inside of us.
I want you to say that again.
Right? It's an illusion.
Have the illusion.
It's an illusion that if we could fix the stuff outside of us, then we would feel better inside of us.
Yep.
And a crazy thing, the addictive part of this is that sometimes that's true. Right? So
if I could just get my kid to stop complaining that it's bedtime, life would be better.
Yeah. And then
figure out a way to handle that, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly. Or, I'm really stressed out that I can't find a pair of shoes that I want. So you go find a pair of shoes that you want, and it's like, oh my God, I love these shoes. And so now you don't have stress. So sometimes it works.
Mm-hmm.
And the crazy thing is, B.F. Skinner, right, one of the most famous behavioral psychologists, he showed that the most addictive form of behavioral change is through what we call intermittent success. That
makes total sense.
Right? So think about gambling. So the reason gambling is so addictive is because you don't always win.
I'm smiling. Yeah. Holy cannoli, right?
So our psychology is actually wired to feed back to us addiction around, if we can just change that thing from the outside, then we will feel better. So there's actually endorphins associated with it too. So we start chasing that thing on the outside that we actually we'll never be able to change. But we chase it, waiting for an addictive endorphin hit in order to make it happen. So part of the wisdom here is knowing like what outside of us we have any locus of control around.
Mm-hmm.
Usually if it has to deal with other people, we have really no locus of control.
I want to stay here for a second from a burnout standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm having so much download right now. I have to just manage myself. And anybody who listens and knows me knows I'll pause in the middle of anything. Because I will, because I that's how I reset myself. But what you said, so I think about if I just got that promotion, if I just got that raise, if I just had that house, if I like so many people live their lives in that. And I've been there too, right? If I just lost enough weight, that's been my like thing, right? Yep. Then I'd be happy. I've lost weight multiple times in my lifetime. That has never led to happiness. But I keep thinking the next time. So yeah. It's not lost to me how addictive this is. And when I see people that are on the way to burnout, right? They're not completely apathetic yet or cynical to the max, but they're just overwhelmed and like overwhelmed. We talk a lot about what are the feelings you're chasing underneath your goals that you're setting? Because the goals that you're setting, usually they don't tie to the feelings you're chasing.
Right.
And so this is why I wanted to pause, because I wanted to have your perspective on that, because I know this to be true, but I'm thinking from a scientific standpoint, everything you just said, if we can only control our perception, our choice, and our actions, and we're chasing, thinking we might get the reinforcement we need, and we're feeling overwhelmed, I think my big question is, what do you do?
Well, so if we back up a second,
yeah,
body,
right? Okay,
breath,
right?
Then that opens up our capacity to actually use both hemispheres.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where it is: perception balancing is about understanding, Lisa, that there are just as many negatives as positives in the world. Right? There's always the same amount of negatives and positives. Always.
So there's like a polarity and equality in the mix.
Exactly.
Almost duality, right? Because you can have both.
So if our perceptions are polarized, then that's a problem, right? The more polarized our perceptions, the more out of balance we get physiologically, and then we find ourselves back in this lower spiral again, trying to get out of it in a mind tunnel. You know, like a hyper positive polarized situation is what we call a fantasy, right?
I'm sorry, that's so funny. Yes. One might call it a fantasy, Brian.
It's a fantasy where there are only upsides and no downsides.
Right? I have to say, I'm 53 and I've never heard it said that way before. And I mean that like with true sincerity in my heart. Of all of the professional development I've done, all of the coaching, and I mean, I've tried a lot of different things. I've never had someone say to me, there's an equal amount of negatives to positive to everything. Mm-hmm. Right? That the energy on both, there's both. What it explains the state of the world sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Where you can see such joy in a moment and then turn on the news and see such horror.
Yeah.
Time. Thank you for letting me giggle and presence that. I'm definitely interested in more, but I just was having a moment of like, what? So when you think about it as a leader and you're weighing your decisions, there's actually a gift in the fact that there's both at all times.
Yeah.
Because it almost makes it like more fluid for you to be able to, in my mind, this is what's showing up for me. Like, oh, wait, if it's not all good or it's not all bad, that actually gives me a better chance of making good decisions.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the fantasy land of everything's great or everything sucks.
Right.
Am I getting that right? Okay.
Totally. Always know there's going to be both negatives and positives to everything. Wow. Now, the question is where are you focusing? Like when you're making decisions going forward, the question really is from a perceptual level is what am I focusing on right now? So that's the third step, right? You do your body stuff, you do your breath stuff, balance your autonomic nervous system, open up both halves of your brain, recognize that everything is balanced in the universe, in the world, and then ask yourself, what am I focused on right now? Am I focused on problems or possibilities?
Mm-hmm.
Am I focused on hopes or fears? Am I focused on where I've been or where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And realize
Really good.
they're both there, right? They're both there. In a
Yep.
moment, you could focus on a problem, and then next moment, you could focus on the possibility. And by the way, the magic is in holding both at the same time.
100% agree. Yeah.
That's the magic. The magic is perceiving both sides at the same time.
Yeah. So appreciative inquiry, positive psychology is where I play a lot with our facilitation and what we do. And what we talk about is the powers in the question. That
Mhm.
words create worlds, which also in what you're saying, it's the focus creates your reality too, right?
Yep.
So when we look at problem solving, the way I look at it is that that's solving to neutral, because there was a problem, you're trying to fix it. But what
Right.
about solving for excellence, or the highest hopes and dreams that you have for yourself, for your team, whatever? And I'm thinking really clearly about, if you're addressing it in the body, you're breathing, and then you're looking at your perception, how much more equipped you are already, even though I don't know step 4. Like,
Mhm.
it's like those 3 things alone, I can see what a shift that can make in any decision-making meeting, any strategic planning, any sort of, prepping for the board review, to do that, right? Because that's going to inform how you show up and what you share.
Totally.
Dude, okay.
Yeah,
I'm in.
absolutely. And we can stay here just for one more second, because I know, Lisa, we've talked about the use of, when you get to the level of perception, you're finally, right? We're finally in our higher brain functions. And so language is the key part of that. And so, we've talked a whole bunch
Yep.
about, how do you know where you are perceptually? How do you know where you are in your mind? Is your brain, are your perceptions, if you will, are they polarized or are they balanced? Well, there are key flags in language.
Mm.
And the way that language operates in our nervous system, actually. So, we walked through a little exercise before.
Yeah, are we going to do it?
Yeah, you want to do this?
Oh, I totally want to do it. Yeah, and I want to say something as we lead this in. So I've made screen share available if you want to pull anything up.
Yep, will do.
Here's what I want to say. When I first started coaching, and I was overwhelmed, this was 20 years ago, my coach said, we really need to work on your language. Because I would say things like, everything's broken. The IT team sucks, right? We're never going to get budget approval. I had real things I thought were true. And she would say, well, where does it not suck? How might it be working? And I'm like, what? So it was painful to change and shift. And I know this to be true. So thank you for sharing what I know you're about to share. Cause this is one of the reasons I called you was, can we do this? So let's do this. Yes.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So let me pull up a screen share for us. So can you see that, Lisa?
I got it. Yep.
Okay, so this is what we call the physiology of words. So when we look at how our brain functions, down here at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side, you see the word desperation. And then as it climbs to the top, we move towards what we call inspiration. So it's desperation because when we use words like have to, ought to, which is should. So ought to.
I say should. Don't should on yourself, right? Yeah. Don't should on yourself.
Exactly. So
should.
Yeah, ought self is the should self. And need to, we're activating lower brain area functioning, like brain stem level functioning, like reptile brain functioning. When we say I have to do it, I should do it, I need to do it, right? We're operating from a very lower brain centers. And that's because the have to is very polarized. What it's saying is I have to have it or I have to get away from it. And when we have to have it or have to get away from it, there's a survival component with it, isn't there? It's like I have to have it because it has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then I will die. Something will really horrible happen. I have to have it. And if you've ever seen anybody like a child who had to have something and they can't have it, it's tantrum level.
It is tantrum level. Yeah, for sure. Even I have to get the promotion. I have to get that project. I have to close this rec. That is a desperation feeling.
Totally.
Even when I'm looking at all 3 of those scenarios, right? I really appreciate this. Yep.
Yeah. And the grace of being the child who has to have something is they actually do have a tantrum.
right?
Right?
Yeah,
They
they're finishing their
scream,
stress response.
they scream, they shout, right? They complete their stress response. But as adults, we don't do that. And so all of that tension accumulates in the body. And then we have heart attacks and we have back pain and we have all these things that have chronic disease processes, especially people who've been in have to for a really, really long time. That creates massive potentiation for chronic health issues.
I want you to say that again, because that's going to be really easy for someone to skim over because they're not going to want to really lean into that because that's scary. Like what I'm hearing you say is the mindset, the choice of words you apply to how you're living your life can make you sick.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And it can be a flag for it. So it feeds into that, but it's also, I like to use them as flags for how your physiology is operating. But just by listening to someone use one of these words, I can tell what part of their brain is activated.
Yeah. So for a leader to even listen for the language too, you can actually tell where someone's coming from, right?
Totally. So if someone walks in your office, says this need to happen, then you know that their brain is polarized. And so unless you get into their body, right? Unless you get into their body, get their breathing online, open up their brain, it's going to be really hard to move them up the ladder. They're like need to, ought to, have to. These are not change-oriented brain functions.
Yeah, I'm gonna if I can, because this is an experience I had with you. So for everyone, I'm just gonna share a personal story for a second.
Yeah.
I made a corporate video for our business, and it's an awesome video. And I had a call with Brian, and I was like, I have to put that video out. Like, look at my face. If you're watching video, you're gonna see I have to put this video out. And Brian's like, do you have to? I'm like, well, yeah, I have to. We did it. Like, we have to. And then what was the next one under have? Is it choose?
Oh, no. I'll bring it back up.
Because I'm going to walk through this how you shifted for me. So I have to, right? I have to. Well, I ought to. We invested the time. I spent the money, or this is for our business. I ought to. I need to. Well, we need to. We need to market. People need to know what we're doing, right? And what happened was Brian was like, but where are you feeling it? Because I don't feel the energy around this that I think you need as the leader of your business to really launch this into the world. Because Lisa, it's amazing. And I was like, what do you mean? So we had this conversation and we did some breathing. I moved my body. We did some breathing. We did all this, right? And then I got to, I want to. And then I actually desired it because I started planning for it. And then when I did it, I was choosing. And honestly, I love to talk about it now. And I love to have that video promoted. And I really want to thank you, Brian, because that, as a business owner, as the face of a brand and a company, right? And knowing that it's up for so much scrutiny in the world that we live in, right? That was scary. And I was coming from desperation when I started. But when I actually launched it and shared it, I was way up in the inspiration space. I quit caring what people thought about how I looked. I quit caring if I said the words right, or what if I pissed someone off? Well, what if I inspire someone? Like I think that's the duality.
Yep.
Right? Like what if this, but what if that? And I might piss someone off and I might inspire another person. So I really, I'm so grateful you're bringing this up, and I hope you might want to add color to that. I'm an open book on this one. You went through this with me, but how did you know that I was in that have to, ought to, need to desperation other than reading my face?
Well, you were using the words.
I don't remember using the words, but maybe I did.
It was not only your body language and your facial expressions and the way you're talking about it, but you're using those words that, it needs to happen. I need to do it. But it was like, I need to do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I need to do it. Like there was energy behind it, but as long as the word need is there, you're in a polarized space.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of walking you up the ladder, open up the body, open the breath, and then start to ask you questions to help walk you up the ladder. Because the fact is, when you start walking up that ladder, once you get into the want to and the desire to, now your limbic brain is lit up. Your mammalian brain is starting to be activated. So the part of our brain that really starts to feel positive emotionality, right? And connection.
Yep.
And then you go higher and choose to, now you're actually up in your prefrontal cortex. You're actually in the part of your brain that gets to plan and organize and look to the future to start creating something in the future. And then when you're in this love to space, again, we're back to the corpus callosum. Now the mediator between both sides of your hemisphere is functioning. So now you're in both hemispheres and the connection wiring between the hemispheres. So love to isn't a romantic kind of love. It's the idea that love is really about seeing both sides, being able to see both sides. And when you're in business, I think people really learn to love their businesses when they see the balance of challenge and support in their businesses. Right? When they see both sides of it. And when you're with a partner and you really love your partner, it's not because you exclusively see everything good about them, it's because you see them exactly who they are. And you learn to accept them exactly who they are for everything that they are, for things you like and don't like, for things that work and all these things. But that's when you're in a state of love. And when you can hold both things in your hand simultaneously, then your mind is balanced. And you're in this inspirational gratitude state for being a part of the whole catastrophe, as John Kabat-Zinn would say, right? Like the whole thing that we're a part of.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this, like for people that go from individual contributor to technical leader to people manager. How many of them do I know they have to do this to get the promotion? They have to lead people because it's the next step, or my family will appreciate me more or respect me more.
Exactly.
But I love to lead people. I love to help people bring out their best in themselves. Like that's a whole different way to show up as a leader. So I think one invitation I want to make right now to everyone is to think about what's the language you're using about, do you see leadership as an opportunity and a blessing, or is it, a curse and a pain in your ass? Do you know what I mean? Because that's going to dictate how you show up. Just like my resistance to putting my video out.
Totally.
This is how do you show up for your people? Yeah, I really appreciate this. I have another question, if I might, on this one for you.
Go for it.
We don't need the slides anymore, but I'm going to ask you for some insight. A lot more crying is happening at work because people are at their breaking points. Tears are leaking out, maybe anger is showing up. And I'm thinking about this language, and I'm specifically thinking about my experience with you in the video, because I was like, oh, I should put this out. I need to put this out, right? And then you had me do a little bit of addressing the body, like where was I feeling it? And I had like a pit in my stomach. And then you had me breathing and blowing it up, right? And then I just started bawling.
Yeah.
And like you held space for that in a way that I didn't get embarrassed that I was crying. Like I felt like there's like a physical release that happens. And so many times I know, so thank you. Let me appreciate that for a second. You did. It was wonderful. And I think there's an opportunity for others to learn from that in our own experience, because how many times do leaders tell me, oh crap, they cried again, or oh, they're crying and I didn't know what to do. And so they'll like dismiss it, go away, act like it didn't happen, move through it. You just held space for it. And I think that that's something really tangible to talk about right now, especially because I know the experience with you. But what did you do as a leader to not get triggered by my tears and, stand true to the process of helping me move up the ladder? What tips can you share with people on that? Because it was a beautiful gift you gave.
Yeah, well, you actually already highlighted it a little bit earlier, Lisa, something we were talking about. Remember we were talking about, I said the toddler has the tantrum, and they're actually completing their stress cycle, right? They're completing the stress cycle.
I think I know where you're going. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so we've been taught actually we were taught this usually when we go to kindergarten, right? We go to kindergarten and then we're told the crazy thing is in kindergarten and first grade, we're still less than 7 years old, which means we're still subconscious beings. But we're being taught to try to self-regulate our emotions when we're totally emotional beings, but we don't have a conscious mind yet. Our conscious brain isn't activated yet. So what we're learning is subconsciously, we're learning to subconsciously suppress our natural subconscious impulses. So it becomes a part of the program. So part of the program is we grow up with not even conscious, but subconscious repression of trauma completion.
I want you to say that again. This is so important. Growing up.
Yeah. We grow up with subconscious, it's in our program, suppression of trauma completion.
Yeah, and that's big T or little t, right?
Big or little t.
Yeah, and I say that for other people. There's like really big trauma, and then there's small trauma, but it adds up. So we won't do a lot of trauma today, but I think it's important to know that. So yes, the completion of the cycle. That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about.
Are you alluding that my tears were me completing my cycle?
Yeah.
Shut the door.
So that
So
crying,
tears is just a completion of the cycle.
crying is a completion of a trauma cycle. It's one way to complete a trauma cycle.
Dude. So if you're the leader and someone's crying in front of you, it's like the invitation is to not be uncomfortable. It's actually to just sit there for that, because they're going to work it out themselves. Don't we always like end up wiping our face and then getting back to our composure? Right.
Yeah.
But when we hold it in, then we can't even be fully present because we're fighting this urge.
Exactly.
You know
and
what?
that takes a lot of energy.
So the invitation for the leader is not here is the invitation. If someone cries, what's the invitation? To the leader sitting there like, oh crap, they're crying.
Yeah. So here's the invitation. This is number 4. This is like perfect. We didn't time this way.
Door. Really?
We
We're going
didn't
to
time
4?
it this way, but
Yes.
this is number 4,
Okay.
right? I mean, this is so cool. So number 4 is connection.
Of course it is. Okay.
So we are wired primally as mammals with our vagus nerve. So every animal has a vagus nerve. However, mammals have what we call a polyvagal nerve tract. So without going deep into the science of that, part of the vagal nerve that mammals have is what's called the ventral vagal complex. So it innervates our face and our throat and our heart. Okay. Now, every mammal, including humans, primates, any mammal, whenever they are under threat, the first thing that we are wired to do reflexively is to look for some other mammal species of our species in our environment. And we automatically, this happens reflexively, we signal to them with our facial signals that we're stressed. So watch any child, right? You can tell when a child is stressed because you'll see it in their face. You can see it in an adult because you'll see it in their face. And so when they're looking at what they're doing, they signal to another species that they're in distress with their face. And if they receive back from the other species affirmation and validation that they're safe, then the stress response completes itself.
Yep.
If they don't get that validation back, they go into a fight or flight response.
This is what you did for me, isn't it? Yeah. So my experience of you was, I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel rushed. I honestly, you were just quiet. We were actually on, like, I was on my phone on a Zoom call. I'm crying. I'm embarrassed. I'm working through it. And then you're like, okay. And, like, you stayed with me. I think it's the staying with me part that was really great, because there are other times when I cry. I do cry. Human, note to self. People are like, oh God, I'll come back. I actually had a manager one time say, well, my father would say this to me too early in the day, because he wasn't really sure what to do with a crying little girl. Go wash your face, get your composure, and let's have a conversation when you're calmed down, right? I'm not gonna calm down, right? This whole thing. And I think my dad didn't know any better. I don't think my dad was a mean guy. He just didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And I think we grow up that way. And what I'm fascinated by what you just said, and I think is a gift for anyone listening, is that if there's someone in your office crying, having a conversation about something they're upset about, just holding that space, being with them, and sending from a facial standpoint and a body language standpoint, a safety feeling that it's okay, is actually going to help them and help you. It's actually in everyone's best interest.
Yeah.
This is so good. Yeah.
And we're wired that way. So it's really just a matter of being mindful and kind of turning, if you're getting activated, do your body, do your own breath, right? So that you're present. And it's just a matter of kind of, not like a big cheesy grin, but just literally just kind of turning your lips up just a little bit and being mindful of how you use your voice, especially if you speak in staccato. If you're kind of a staccato speaker like this, and you like that will actually convey non-safety. Where if you use what we call vocal prosody, where you change the tonality of your voice as you're speaking, that will convey more sense of safety, as compared to if I was just talking like this and telling you that now you are safe Lisa, trust me, you are. Do you see what see what I mean?
It's like a jackhammer. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
not safe. Or AI, right? That's like machine.
Yeah. So
Okay,
change your vocal prosody and just be present in a way where you're just holding that space for the person. You don't have to know the right thing to say, because it's not about saying anything. It's
Yeah.
just about holding the space for someone.
Yeah. And like everyone's like, what does holding space mean? I mean, honestly, I think it's just being heart activated and present with another human being for whatever's going on.
Yeah.
You know, another thing I learned from working with you and Ani, sighing, because sighing happens a lot at work, right?
Mhm.
And I had never understood this about sighing. I thought sighing meant I'm trying to tell you you're a pain in the ass and you're asking too much. and she's like, that's actually just part of the process. It's actually completion, right? And I was like, oh, it kind of does feel like a rally. Like, okay, this sucks. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm like, when you guys do this sigh, I can actually feel the energy going up from the bottom of need to or have to.
Yeah. Yep.
I love to. I think about it even in my own family. My husband does sigh, and I'm like, he's like, I love you. I'm going to do it, but I didn't want to do it right now. So I'm going to go get there. And I feel the sigh take him up that ladder.
Yeah.
So I've learned this from you guys. And I just want to say thank you for that, because
yeah, it's an easy one.
I don't know how many people know that sighing is actually a completion of the process too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So much here. So I want to go back to the 4 steps, and I want to say, when we are in an uncertain world, hint today, and probably every day, you said there's 3 things. You can control your perceptions. You can control your, I wrote it down. Choices. I can read my writing. And then the third is your actions or your decisions.
Yeah.
And that there's always negative and positive and everywhere. Like we have both at all times. It's where are you focusing? And the way to make these decisions is to start by addressing it in the body, to then go to the mindful breathing, then take a look at your perception, your intellect, and then go to connection.
Yeah.
Is there ever a time when you're alone and you need to get to connection? Like, what is the tip for someone who's just like, I'm working from home, I'm homeschooling my kids, my husband's away. How do I connect? Like, because there's these jokes and these memes all the time about, mommy juice and all that stuff. I don't think that's what you mean.
Yeah.
I think the connection, is it to another human being, or could it be to yourself?
It can be to yourself, certainly. It can, if you're practiced, right? If you're practiced at connecting to something larger than yourself, like, so
could be prayer,
right?
Could be meditation,
could be prayer, could be meditation, could be a tree,
a nature walk. Yep, go hug a tree.
Walk, something like that. Yeah, most definitely. Like that works.
Got
a
it.
A pet. It could be, if you've got a cat or a dog, or something you can pet. A pet you can pet. It's like, fish don't work as well for this. But something you can pet is also a great way to do that. I'm a huge fan of having like 3 or 4 people on speed dial that you can just like, hey, are you available for like a 5-minute connection? Right. Just so I can hear your voice. So I can hear your voice. If one of those people is willing to pre-record a message for you, and you can keep it on your phone so that you can just boom, and you get someone's voice. Then if you've got a picture of someone you really care about on your desk, and they are reflecting back to you a smiling face, like that's another way to connect, right? So there's all other ways to access that if you have it figured out ahead of time.
I think this is so important, especially when people are just so busy and they feel like, well, I don't have anybody to call. Well, yeah, there's ways to do that, right? My sister and I made videos for each other when we were having rough times. So just listen to it. It's like Bill and it doesn't matter. I was going to tell you a joke about a movie, but it doesn't really matter. So what I want to say is thank you for that. Like, that's huge. So we've talked about a lot, and really, I think fundamentally what we're getting to, and what you've said in 7 different ways. And I really love the ladder you put up, because we're talking about connection and the language that we use. The world that we're in, this whole new normal, this whole what's next of the new normal. The only way to be okay and to really navigate that is to be clear on what you can control, which of those 3 things, and then to build the tools and the capacity and the awareness of yourself to really look at the body, do the breathing, look at the perception, and go for the connection. Like, you just gave everybody the roadmap to navigate uncertainty.
That's the roadmap right there.
Dude, what a gift.
do
you love that I work with you and don't even know how to describe it, but yet I know how important it is?
I love it.
That's like the coolest thing.
Doing it.
So I'm going to add something to this. One thing I always talk about is the power of music. And I think sometimes that actually does help me address it in my body. It does help me breathe. I'm certainly caused to reflect differently by music. And sometimes it's a connection to my higher power when I listen to music. Is there a song you listen to or you love that either reminds you of what you've taught us today or helps you get centered in your own practice?
Yeah, no brainer for me. It's number one on my Spotify list every year. It's Take It Easy by the Eagles. I just love that song. I just cue it up and it just puts me in a take it easy kind of rhythm and ways there. Take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels make you crazy.
Lighten up, right?
But you still can.
Oh, dude, it's going. Okay. Yes. Oh my gosh. I've listened to that a million times, but now I have a different perspective. And I honestly think when I listen to it now, I'm going to remember these 4 steps because you just tied a song to it. And I love watching you smile as you're singing it because you're like doing your work. So good.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Brian, if there's a double dog dare for the leaders today, or a question or reflection, or one thing they can do as they're navigating uncertainty, what is your dare, question, reflection, insight? What would you like them to hear from you?
Well, I think you've actually already said it. My big dare would be at the start of your next meeting, before you sit down for the meeting, when you're standing, do a little shake with your body. Just kind of do a little, everybody together, just do a little bit of a shake and what we call a little bit of a blither, where you go, do a little shake, take 3 deep breaths. Empty everything out of your lungs 3 times. And then get started. That would be my double dog dare. Start with the body and the breathing, and then see how your meeting goes.
I was timing you, so I wasn't doing it with you because I wanted to tell everybody, yeah, that double dog dare took less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, easy.
This is not a lot. And you can do it on a Zoom call. Brian and I we were joking how we were both preparing before this,
yeah, right?
Doing the blithering and, I do the tapping and the shaking, all of it. Yeah. So I love your double dog dare. It's so good because what's the worst that can happen? You might giggle a little feeling silly. That's it. Because everything else is brain science. It's good for you, right?
Exactly. The worst thing that would happen is something that's good for you.
All right. So I know how to find you, but I'd love our listeners to know how to find you. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you if they want to know more?
Yep. You can find us at the somaticcoachingacademy.com.
Boom. somaticcoachingacademy.com. Brian, my heartfelt gratitude for what you have done in my life, for giving your time to our audience today, and just for who you are in this world. I am inspired. I'm smarter today than I was before we started. I know more. I feel equipped to help my clients more, right? To be a better wife, a better mom, right? Because I'm always striving to have such connection. And I think what I was missing before at times of stress was connection is step 4. And sometimes I go straight to connection. But if you don't do those first 3, you can't fully connect anyway, because you're still running in the background. You're processing. Yep. Yeah, what a gift. Brian, thank you for being on CTRL+ALT+DELETE today. I'm so grateful for your time.
Lisa, thanks for having me. It's my sincere hope that everybody listening to this feels so much better going away with it and is able to positively impact other people's lives with what they've learned here today.
Well, if there's anybody that can do that, it's you, my friend. Thank you for that gift.
Thanks.
All right, you got the double dog dare. Start your meetings, everybody. We want to know about it. Comment in the show notes and let us know. All right, take good care.